Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome into the Shelby County High School Football Show alongside Andrew Simonson. I'm Alec Etheridge, and it's the final week of the regular season, so let's jump right into it. It's going to be a lot of fun this week as we look ahead to all the games that we have taking place. The weather's cold out here, and Andrew, I don't know about you, but this is when I get amped up for football. Is when we get this cold weather. We're a week away from the playoffs. This, to me, we look to August and September as football season. This, to me, is football season.
It's not football season until the weather hits 60 degrees. Before my fingers start hurting from being numb outside in the football game, Spain Park Saraland, I'm looking at you last year. But overall, this is exactly when you get excited for everything. We already know all of our playoff teams that are coming in. We have 10 of our 14 teams making it to the postseason, a phenomenal achievement for all of them. And now we get one last preview at 9 of them before we hit the playoffs for all of them. So it's going to be an absolutely phenomenal week and something that could give a lot of teams something to look forward to.
And we sit here on a Tuesday as we record the show, Tuesday morning from Chelsea High School, our game of the week, Chelsea and Oak Mountain, and it's in about the mid-50s right now. This is going to be the high temperature on Thursday, which is the day that most of our games take place. The low that night going to be likely in the 30s at some point. Hopefully not while we're covering games, but it's probably going to be in the 40s there on Thursday night. So the coldest game of the season for many of our teams, likely going to carry into the postseason. So it'll be interesting to see if that has a factor here going into this final week of the regular season. But before we jump into this week's show and talk about all the games that we have coming up later on this week, we got to talk about the Thompson Warriors winning a region championship, the Briarwood Lions winning a region championship. The only bold prediction that I remember all year long, I'm just going to say that I went 1-0 all year. Briarwood and Thompson last week, we said it, are going to win the region championship. Everything unfolded for Briarwood to do that as Corner lost on Thursday night. Briarwood went out, took care of business against Hayden. Thompson then takes care of business against Prattville. So, Andrew, let's talk about the Thompson Warriors and what that means. Brought to you by Wayne's Pest Control, proud sponsors of the Thompson Warriors. 866-WAYNES1. Call Waynes.com to learn more about all your pest control needs there. But, Andrew, the Thompson Warriors, a gritty performance, not playing their best football right now, I don't think. I think they've got another level to reach. But they put together what they needed to against a very scrappy Prattville team this past Friday.
I'm just starting to get worried about this Thompson team, though. I know that this team always reaches its next gear in the playoffs, and so I'll have that confidence until I see it disproven. But with a difficult road ahead of it, it's really going to be interesting to see how Thompson approaches all of that. Obviously, they've got a rematch with Carver Montgomery in the playoffs. That's a team that, while still a very good team, it was one that Thompson beat handily earlier in the season. And then you've likely got Mary Montgomery and Central Phoenix City on the way to playing whoever's going to come out of that other half of the bracket, likely Vestavia or Hewitt. It's going to be a very difficult road to the championship, probably one of Thompson's hardest yet. But we also said it last year, so... Yeah. Here's hoping to be proven wrong.
And one thing you look at, too, with this team, and I called them out last week, especially on the defensive side of the ball, but this is a team that's played 10 consecutive games. We look at the college level and talk about Alabama coming off of those 4 ranked games, and then they go into play South Carolina, and they almost lose that game. It's mentally exhausting, especially when you're playing in Class 7A Region 3, which at the high school level in Alabama, we compare to the SEC in college football. And you just mentally, physically, you're drained after that run of playing the best teams in the state. And so to me, the reason they're about to shift into another gear, they've got a bye week this week going into the playoffs. So no game this week to close out the regular season. They can start preparing for the postseason. They can mentally rest. They can physically rest. And I think that's a big bonus for them going into the playoffs.
Exactly. You can never discount a good week of rest for this team. I do think this team still has the talent to compete with just about anybody. I still have them as a second or third best team within Class 7A until Central Phoenix City gets toppled off. That's going to be my top team overall. But this Thompson team absolutely has the potential to be that state champion within this state. We just have to see it proven out on the field, and what a sight it would be if this team does it for yet another year.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch the Class 7A playoffs in general. That bracket sets up to be a fun ride here over the next few weeks as we chase down that state championship there, that first Wednesday there in December. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch Class 7A unfold, but we got a lot more action to talk about. The Briarwood Lions, we just mentioned, won a region championship. Huge for Matthew Forrester, the head coach there, the Lions. His first since his first season with Briarwood back in 2019. We'll talk a little bit more about them as we preview their matchup with McAdory here a little bit later on in the show. But several other big matchups taking place this week across the board as we close out the regular season, many trying to get ready for the playoffs and others fighting for pride. And in this rivalry battle right here, our game of the week, Oak Mountain and Chelsea, we're going to talk a lot about that for both of these teams who have shown a lot of promise even against challenging schedules here throughout the season. We'll be missing the playoffs, but for Oak Mountain and Chelsea, when you get into this matchup, that does not matter. It's a rivalry battle, and you're going to get the best from both of these teams. That's where we start our game of the week, right here between Chelsea and Oak Mountain. As you jump into this matchup between the Chelsea Hornets and the Oak Mountain Eagles, it's all about pride in this one and a fun rivalry battle between these two schools, one that means a lot to each of the coaches, both the fan bases, and all the players that'll take part in this matchup. And just a couple of years ago, you had the split with some of the Chelsea students going to Oak Mountain in that Highland Lakes, Mount Laurel, Highway 41 area, transitioning from Chelsea students to Oak Mountain students, which has added another layer to this rivalry. But the interesting thing to me when I look at this matchup is it's one where you look at the seasons not as successful as you would want them to be, but you also look back at it and look at the talent they've played, some of the improvements they've made along the way. Very impressed with what Oak Mountain's done the last couple of weeks and a couple of losses. Chelsea, they've given it their all down the stretch in some of their toughest games of the season. Both these teams have shown promising signs. They've continued to work. The schedules have just been really challenging, and now we jump into a matchup like this, Andrew. This is one where one of these teams is going to gain a ton of momentum going into the offseason.
Exactly, and you look at both of these teams, like you just said, all four of Chelsea's losses have been to playoff teams this year, and then Oak Mountains is pretty close to that as well, outside that Hillcrest loss last week. And speaking of that loss, as well as Chelsea's loss against Benjamin Russell, it's the fight that those teams showed throughout those games that I think was the most encouraging. Oak Mountain, I think we've seen it 2 out of the 3 weeks coming into this one. That finish to the Hoover game, obviously very strong, and then you just face a red-hot Vestavia team that just rolled them over on a Thursday night. But then you come back a week after and respond to that with a good performance, all things considered, against Hewitt Trustville, which I thought put them in very good standing going into Hillcrest Tuscaloosa, and they came one play away from being able to send that game to overtime. So I think that showed a lot of confidence for this team to be able to compete with an offense like that, and a lot of signs for the future of this team being able to do that with so many of their pieces coming back next year. And then Chelsea, just with all of the chips down, just being able to stack up against a Ben Russell team that, albeit a team that, even though I said earlier in the season that this team's a state championship contender, starting to doubt that a little bit, considering their performances against Helena and Pelham in the past weeks as well. But still, to be able to keep it close with the Wildcats for that long, I think says a ton about this team and the culture that it has right now. They've got the right guy in place here at Chelsea and Todd Cassidy, and I think that overall this team, all things considered, even though they didn't make the playoffs, this is still a strong, solid group with a lot of things to look forward to, particularly in this matchup.
A little more about Ben Russell in the Spain Park segment here in a little while. And my thoughts on those two teams. But, yeah, you look at this matchup. I mean, Chelsea's a team that started the season 5-1 overall. They've lost 3 straight since then against some really good teams. Oak Mountain, they've lost 4 straight, 6 of the last 7, but also a team that started to compete with some really good football squads down the stretch here, including last week against Hillcrest Tuscaloosa, a team that's got a lot of athletes out there that you have to match up with. So that's what I've been impressed with, is that both of these teams, despite things not going well down the stretch or going the way that they want them to go, they continue to fight in all of these games. And you know they're going to put that to the test in this matchup, the one that they want more than any throughout the season, even with no playoff or region implications on the line, just the opportunity to go out and basically beat your neighbor and have those bragging rights going into the offseason, but also to build that momentum and that confidence. And even the loser in this game can do that as well if you come out and compete and you know you've given it your all in this matchup. You look at it on paper, Chelsea's been a little bit more of a consistent squad so far this season. They're scoring 27 points per game, giving up 24 points per game. But Oak Mountain in Class 7A Region 3, really the defensive number is what stands out to me. Their offense has struggled a lot this season. Young quarterback in Charlie Vaccarella. They've got some growth that's still got to come at that on that side of the ball. But defensively, giving up 28.6 points per game in Class 7A Region 3, making it all the way through that gauntlet and not giving up more than 30 points per game when your offense is only scoring 17 is pretty impressive to me. And so I look at that, and I think this is one that could be a very physical football game, maybe a little bit more lower scoring, which really brings both teams into it.
I completely agree with you because both defenses have looked fairly solid at different points throughout the season. I look in particular at Chelsea's defense, and it's kept a lot of those games pretty low scoring. I think about the games against Pelham and Helena as games where this team had every opportunity to be in those games, especially early on with the way the defense was playing. And obviously those games don't fall in their favor, but then also keeping up with a really solid Benjamin Russell attack that had its moments, showed a lot of its athleticism, but then this team was able to recover and hang in there very well until almost the very end. So you look at Oak Mountain, it's got a similarly athletic profile as well in multiple ways where it can hurt you both on the ground and in the air. Still a developing team overall, but one that you definitely need to take seriously. And I expect both these defenses to come out here and go to work against teams that might not necessarily stand out on paper on the offensive side, but ones that I think do pose a lot of threats, especially I think on the Oak Mountain side.
Yeah, well, let's go to our Wayne's Pest Control pick here as we do our Wayne's Pest Control shout out here for sponsoring the Oak Mountain Eagles on this year's Shelby County High School football show. It's about to get, it is colder. I can tell you right now as I'm starting to tremble a little bit here on this cold, cloudy, breezy day, but the pesky pests are going to be trying to find their way inside. So make sure you call Wayne's Pest Control to take care of all those pest needs throughout the rest of the fall and the winter. 866-WAYNES1 or callwaynes.com to learn more. So, Andrew, your Wayne's Pest Control pick this week for our game of the week between Chelsea and Oak Mountain. Where are you going?
This is legitimately a toss-up, and I think it easily is the best game that we have on the schedule.
I'll make
this
a deal
week,
with you right now because I'm so torn. I'll just go the opposite of where you're going.
No, you're not. I think the Oak Mountain is just going to get a couple more plays than this Chelsea team. I think Chelsea, honestly, I don't know whether to count this team out or not because they've risen to the occasion over the last few weeks, even in losses. And it plays very well with the chips down. However, I'm not sure the chips in this case are going to be able to overcome for the entire game against an Oak Mountain team. I think Oak Mountain just makes a couple more big plays and that ends up deciding this game. But this could easily flip over into Chelsea's favor, especially if they're able to get the air attack going and able to recover some of the production they've lost on the ground, because that's been what's missing over the last few weeks. As Chase Malone and Morgan Barnes have been limited from injuries, that's really been the aspect of this game that's been taken away the most, and I think what's decided this team's fate more than anything.
Yeah, I look back to last week, and this was a Chelsea offense that needed to take a step forward. Was very impressed by what they did against Benjamin Russell. That was a one-score game in the final few minutes. They ultimately lose 42-21. But they had a chance to even that score up, make that an even more interesting game there down the stretch. Tight football game. They scored 21 points, though. And that's what stood out to me, a team that had scored just 7 against or 9 or less against Helena, Pelham, and Spain Park, their toughest opponents in the region this year. Then they go out against the region champion and put up 21 points in that matchup. So that growth offensively did impress me last week, but I got to see it 2 weeks in a row, and you got to outscore your opponent. And to me, this is an Oak Mountain defense with what they've done in 7A Region 3 that's impressed me enough that I think they can win a low-scoring physical battle in this football game too. So not quite going the opposite there.
I told you weren't.
But it is one that I'm very torn. I've been torn on and looking at it. I really was tempted to actually go the opposite just because of that. And Chelsea's going to make this a big game. They're going to make it a close contest on their home field. This is a team that's faced a little bit of adversity over the last couple of weeks. A lot of people talking about, the coaching and how the play calling hasn't been great. Things just haven't changed. And I've seen a lot of people say, you don't know what you're talking about. They play a challenging schedule. This is a team that has improved. They're young at quarterback. They're inexperienced at that position. They don't have a ton of success at receiver right now because they're young there and inexperienced there, and they're starting to get better at all those positions. Meanwhile, the defense has done enough at times this year to keep this squad in games as well. So this is a team that has shown growth. They're going to come out here and show a lot of fight, but so is Oak Mountain against a very challenging schedule, and the way their defense is playing right now, to me, is the difference maker in this football game. It's going to be a lot of fun, though. This is one of my favorite rivalries each and every year. Glad we continue to get to see it despite the 7A, 6A differential, even though they both, to me, are 6A level teams with what they are able to put out there. So I'll be excited to see it. It's going to be a lot of fun here between Chelsea and Oak Mountain. We'll see who can win a tight battle right here at Chelsea High School. The Spain Park Jaguars are rocking and rolling right now and at the right time of the season, coming off of a 49-0 shutout of Chilton County, much to what we expected last week against the Tigers, but they did most of that in the first half, which was very, very impressive. Brock Bradley not having to do a ton on the offensive side as far as pass attempts, but he's making the most of those pass attempts and is really just picking apart defenses right now. Spain Park is becoming healthy. They are becoming experienced, and they are becoming a legitimate threat to chase down a possible 6A state championship this year with what we've seen here down the stretch. The problem is the playoff schedule is going to be a very challenging run for them. This week they get a Gardendale team, Andrew. Good chance for them to get some confidence, continue to build that momentum forward in the right direction as they go toward the playoffs, and hopefully get these guys an early lead to get some of that experience in the depth that you've got there for the Jags.
Yeah, and that's because you have a Gardendale team that comes into this matchup 1-8, and it's really 0-9 because the only reason they even have a win is because James Clemens fielded an ineligible player in their opener, and they got that win as a result of
winless on the field this year. This is it's kind of sad to see the decline because this is a team just as recent as 2022, I believe, that was in the quarterfinals of the 6A playoffs, if I remember correctly. And so to see them now in a winless situation, this is a matchup on paper when you look at these two names and you expect it to be a challenge, but Gardendale just not playing great football.
And that's what these teams expected when they scheduled this matchup. You have a coach in Tim Vakakis who obviously scheduled fairly difficult and mainly 7A outside of this Gardendale game in order to get this team accustomed to the challenges it was going to have to face once it gets to the playoffs. And like you alluded to, this team's playoff road is going to be extremely difficult. You have a McAdory team first round that I think is very ripe for an upset against Spain Park, and then you're going to have to go down to the coast potentially for that second week. So it could be a very, very difficult path for Spain Park to get out of easily the more difficult half of the bracket, the South versus the North this year. But right now, obviously, it's about both striking that balance between momentum and rest. Last week, they were able to get a little bit of both because they obviously had the shortened second half against Chilton County, a dominant 49-0 win that I think gave their offense a lot more confidence going into this week as well. And the defense as well is playing incredible football as well. And I expect the same against Gardendale. I think this is a very quick matchup for them, one that they're able to get up in fairly easily, and then be able to get some of their younger guys some action, and then just prep for the playoffs, because that's where this team is going to need to prove itself to live up to that preseason hype that we had for them coming in.
And Spain Park, I talked a little bit in the last segment how I'd mentioned Ben Russell here. Ben Russell started to regress a little bit, not playing their best football of the season right now. Still a very good team, still going to make a run. Spain Park has started to play its best football of the season, and at the right time. This is a team that's won 4 in a row, 5 of the last 7, 5 in a row that they've won. And over the last 4, they've scored 40-plus in each game, given up 13 or less in each game. The defense has given up 21 or less in all but 1 this year and 14 or less in all but 3. So on both sides of the ball, this is a very good football team. And, Andrew, as we go to our Wayne's Pest Control pick for this game, the one number I point out is Gardendale's giving up 41.2 points per game. That does not bode well for the Rockets in this game with what Spain Park's offense can do. So our Wayne's Pest Control pick of the game, 866-WAYNES1. Call Waynes.com to learn more. about all your pest control needs. Where are you going when you hear a number like that?
It's Payne Park, because you look at a really good offense against a really poor defense, especially a defense that hasn't faced the level of competition that Payne Park has. I think the Jags roll to a big win in this one. And I'm with you. I think if Payne Park and Ben Russell play again right now, I like the Jaguars in that matchup.
Yeah,
I think this team has all the momentum coming into the playoffs. A little bit of a knock against Ben Russell because, like I said in the last segment with Chelsea and Oak Mountain, I definitely think and agree with you that they have regressed in that regard. But it's all about making the most of the path that's in front of you. McAdory, likely Saraland as well in that mix coming out of the South. So going to have to prove that you're the best against the best.
Yeah, and I do. McAdory's a team that can compete, and they could pull off an upset if everything goes their way. Payne Park's the better team in that matchup.
Agreed.
If they're focused. That next week, though, it's unfortunate that we have to see two teams this talented play that early in the playoffs if that's how everything shakes out. So we'll see if that's how it unfolds. But right now, you got to start with what you got ahead. That's Gardendale this week to get ready for the playoffs. The Jags, the better team in this one. You could throw out Nash Davis in this game. The Jags are still going to roll up points and score enough to win this football game. Defense is talented enough as well. Payne Park rolls in this one. They continue to build that momentum, and then we jump into the Class 6A playoffs and see if they can put together a magical run. The Calera Eagles have an opportunity to close out the regular season and the season with a win this week as they travel to take on Stanhope Elmore. And this is a Calera team that started to play some of its better football here late in the season, which is what we expected. A young group replacing some key talented players there at Calera this year. And they've started to gel and click a little bit here down the stretch, especially on the offensive side of the football. Last week they do lose 39-21 to Helena in that matchup, but yet again another game that was really close for a long period of time. Helena just did what, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute as well, but the Huskies starting to get into that rhythm of doing what they want to do, which is put you away in the second half of football games, and that's what they were able to do. Calera, from a physical standpoint, that's a tough matchup for them in the second half of a football game, and Helena put that one away. But going into this matchup against Stanhope Elmore, this is a Stanhope team sitting at 6-3 overall this year. They're coming off a 35-28 win over Wetumpka, but you look at what they've done so far, 26.8 points per game on the offensive side, giving up 21 points per game so far defensively. When you look at this matchup, Andrew, it's one that Calera seems like they may be able to compete in against a pretty good Stanhope Elmore team.
It was one they were able to compete in last year. It was just a one-score game last year over in Calera. Obviously, you shift down to Millbrook this year, and Stanhope Elmore just a little bit better this year. They only have 3 losses on the year compared to last year where they had more, but you look at all 3 of their losses. They're all 3 against teams that as recently as last week I had ranked in my top 10s of my ballots. Prattville, Russell County, and Pike Road. So this team is pretty battle-tested overall, and Calera, that's not to say that they aren't, because they played in one of the most difficult regions, and you look at especially last week, banged up in the run game, really had to rely on the pass game, and then you're going up against a Helena defense that's just going to, a Helena offense, that's just going to gash you on the ground. I thought they held up very well. I thought Helena obviously in control for large portions of the game, but Calera never got out of it until the very end. So I was very impressed with this Eagles team overall, especially when you consider a lot of these guys are indeed coming back next year. I think the culture is there. I think that this team is heading in the right direction, and I think they got their guy in Scott Riles. So I do think they're going to contend in this matchup as they have within the last few weeks. However, I'm not entirely sure that the defense is going to be able to keep up with what Stanhope Elmore is going to put out there on the field. So I'm taking the Mustangs in this matchup, but I wouldn't be surprised if Calera goes ahead and makes it another touchdown game.
Yeah, same breakdown for me. I think that it's the defensive side for Calera that worries me just a little bit too much to overcome on that side. But last year, a 35-32 game, I think that Calera is very similar to what they were last year. They're starting to get into that form, and Stanhope maybe a little bit better, maybe about the same from a talent standpoint. I think this is going to be a competitive football game. I think it's going to go down to the wire, just like we've seen the last couple of weeks for the Eagles. It's a matter of how they finish, and if they can prove they can finish strong, which they didn't do last week against Helena, then they're going to have an opportunity to pick up a win in this football game. But for me, it's that defensive side. Can they make those big defensive plays in the second half to pick up a win? And we'll see if they can make that happen. But that's the big key to the game to me. And right now, Stanhope Elmore just proving a little bit more when it comes to that defensive side of the football. And I think that makes the difference in this matchup. The Helena Huskies are rolling. They're playing their best football of the season right now. It's a team that's won 3 consecutive games. They take down Calera 39-21. They're going into the playoffs as the 3 seed out of Class 6A Region 3. So this is a team full of confidence right now. And Andrew, against this Tarrant team in this matchup, don't expect anything less to continue what they've done the last few weeks, which is dominate in this game against Tarrant.
These two teams are leagues apart, both on paper and in person. Tarrant, obviously, is a Class 4A team, 1-8 on the season. Really, the main reason they scheduled this matchup is that former Helena assistant Greg Appling is at the helm of this program. It's a way to help kickstart this program a little bit as well. But you look overall, it's a team that has losses to some pretty poor teams on its schedule. They lost to Holt in region play as well as Fairfield, and they gave Montevallo their lone win of the season. Have not looked good overall on either side of the field, and you have a Helena team that's looking very, very good, especially on the offensive side. And then once the second half kicks in, the defense just gets right back to that level as well. I was very impressed by this Helena team. Being able to see them for the second time this season. Last week, they exhibited a lot of the same traits. That made me really like them against Pelham as well earlier this season. And this team, it's definitely got some upset potential going into the playoffs. They'll be at Bessemer City in a couple of weeks. That's a very solid football team, are the Purple Tigers. But I do think Helena has the momentum on its side. They've got the playmakers now. The run game looks very, very good. Soriano just continues to hit throws and move this team down the field consistently. And this defense, once it gets going, absolute ball hawks. And although they've given up some big plays, especially in the pass game, I think last week as well, it's a team that once they get going, it's really hard to stop them. I think they're going to get going into that gear early against an outmatched Tarrant team and then be able to rest themselves up for the playoffs. But the biggest key in this matchup that I do know that Richie Busby talked about last week in our media availability is that obviously, this is a Helena team that's extremely young. They're going to be returning pretty much all their starters next year, which is a phenomenal achievement for them. But beyond that, a very young depth piece behind them for pretty much all these position groups. So being able to get those players some experience now in a matchup like this, live game reps, it's going to be a really good opportunity for this team to grow for the future, which I know is what they're doing right now.
And going into the playoffs, too, it's a team that, in my years of covering Helena, when they get in the playoffs, that first round, that second round, they've had some really tight games against pretty good football teams, just like Bessemer City, and they can't quite pull them out.
Right.
They need to get some confidence, and they need to come out fast in this game. And that, to me, that's the big thing. When you go into the playoffs, you don't want to mess around in the first half. You want to be ready to roll. You want to come out, take the early lead, and then if you play Helena football, if you've got a lead going into the second half, you feel really, really good at that point because you're going to make adjustments and you're going to continue to pound the ball away on the offensive side. And that's where Dom Santiago comes into play as well. And that takes us to our Oak Mountain Hearing pick here, oakmountainhearing.com. Set up a consultation. Don't let hearing loss affect you throughout the high school football season. If you've got any issues there, reach out to Oak Mountain Hearing, oakmountainhearing.com. And Dom Santiago is a guy that's gone over 200 yards the last 2 games, playing his best football at the right time. This team's healthy. Caleb Soriano's taking the next step as a young quarterback, stepping in for Nate Ferguson, who's been dealing with some nagging injuries throughout the season. And he's still a guy that can come in and give them a sure-handed quarterback. Even with the injuries that he's faced, he can be a steady player as well. So I look at that, obviously, against Tarrant, a team that's 1-8. They've lost 7 in a row. Helena's the better team here. It's about coming out and starting fast in this matchup to me. But it sounds like I know we got your pick. You're going with Helena in this one pretty easily. I'm going the same way. Expect the Huskies to roll big in this matchup against Tarrant. Put up a lot of points early, coast to the win, get ready for the playoffs and what could possibly be an upset there in the first round of a 2-3 matchup and maybe the start of a special run here over the next few weeks. This team's clicking right now. We'll see if they can keep it rolling into the postseason. The Pelham Panthers pick up a win, and a big one at that, this past Friday night as they take down Leeds 21-14, a contender there in the 5A classification, and the Panthers sitting with a freshman quarterback in John Hampton as well, stepping into that role, handling it successfully. The run game also playing well. The defense stepped up in a big way. Just a good performance from the Pelham Panthers last week. Now they take on Fort Payne, and they welcome the former Chelsea coach. We're at Chelsea High School, and Chris Elmore into this matchup, which, crazy to think about, has been there, I believe, 8 seasons now, which feels like just yesterday I was interviewing him on the sideline here at Chelsea. Now he's been away from here for that long. But a fun little matchup here between these two teams. Elmore very familiar with Pelham, very familiar with teams out of this area. So it should be a pretty good football game going into this matchup. Andrew, what do you see that could be a difference maker between these two teams?
Well, obviously, I think you look at Fort Payne's success over the course of the season. I would argue they're not quite as battle-tested as what Pelham has been. Their one loss on the season is to Gunnersville, a very, very good Class 5A team. But this is just a Fort Payne team that's just completely rolling right now. They're a borderline top 10 team in Class 6A, and I think that's for a reason because they're clicking on both ends of the field. And I think they're going to pose a lot of challenges for this Pelham team. But the one thing that I will say about this Panthers team is I did count them out going into last week because they would be shorthanded and a little bit banged up, and that continued over the course of the game as Tristan Rutledge picked up just a little bit of an injury in there. Not sure if that's going to be something that limits him this week. It did sound fairly minor from what Tyler described, but overall I just described it as such a gritty performance. John Hampton coming in there as a freshman and getting that big win, just following the game plan very well, and being able to take advantage of what Austin Gray was setting up for that offense was a phenomenal task for him and a great confidence booster going into the rest of his young career. And then Tristan Rutledge just gutting it out for just one more play and one more yard to get back out there. I think that just says all the difference for this team and the culture that's been instilled with them under Ross Newton. These guys are going to start winning very quickly overall, and I think they've got the setup for success in the future. But right now, Fort Payne just feels like a bit too much of a step up for the shorthanded team.
We got to go to our 3D Air Services pick here. Don't skip ahead on our sponsor there, Andrew.
I'm not used to this. I'm not used to this flow, Alec.
Changing things up here this week. But before we jump ahead to that, this is a Pelham defense that I want to talk about too, because of how improved they've been this year. This is a unit that's made the difference. Last week, that was huge for them. With a freshman quarterback, you could put faith in your defense to allow him to get comfortable and improve throughout that game. But it's a defense so far is giving up 22.4 points per game on the defensive side. So improved from where they were last year. It's 12 less points per game than they were giving up last week. And so, Andrews, I turn to you to kind of break that down and how important that's been. We've got to tell you about 3D Air Services. It's getting cooler out here for all your HVAC needs to get that heater tuned up and ready for the late fall, winter run. Make sure you reach out to 3D Air Services, proud sponsors of the Pelham Panthers and the Briarwood Lions on this year's show. And we go to Andrew, our 3D Air Services pick here between Pelham and Fort Payne. Tell me a little bit about the defensive improvement and if you think that there's something they can do on that side to make this a competitive game and have the chance to pull off the upset.
It's not the flashiest unit in the world, I will say that, but it's a Pelham team that just knows how to get it done. They definitely showed a lot of promise earlier on in the season, and there have been a few tests where they haven't quite been able to keep up with as well. But I look especially at that Ben Russell game for being able to keep them in it for that long, and then last week against Leeds, being able to give your offense a chance to win it late. That's really all you need to do, is just give your offense a chance to go and win the football game late and see what happens. Obviously, the bigger the lead, the better, and the bigger the cushion, the better. But just giving yourself a shot is, I think, important, and I think that's what's going to be important in this matchup. You got a Fort Payne team that may be going in, resting some starters going into next week. Obviously, Pelham will want to keep in mind its playoff matchup against Hueytown, as well as the Panthers are returning to the playoffs as well. But like I was alluding to a little bit earlier before you cut me off, Alec, got
to pay the bills. Got to pay the bills.
I know you do, but I think Fort Payne just a step above where Leeds was. I think we saw that in both of their matchups last year. And I think overall, Fort Payne is just going to have a little bit more of an advantage over this team. But I do think that Pelham shows itself well within this matchup and then carries a little bit of momentum heading into a difficult first-round matchup.
Yeah, Fort Payne just a little bit more consistent on both sides of the ball, scoring 32.3, giving up 17 points per game. Pelham, you look at the John Hampton there at the quarterback position, talk about a little bit of maybe a nagging injury there for Rutledge. How does this offense score against a very good defense this week with some of the question marks and issues they're dealing with right now? I think that's the biggest thing that they're going to face. I think it's going to be another competitive game with the way that their defense is playing right now, But Fort Payne, with the consistency we've seen on both sides of the ball, I think that's the big difference maker in this one. I agree. I think Fort Payne will be able to walk away with a win, but that doesn't mean a week later I don't think Pelham could possibly pull off a big upset there against Hueytown to open the playoffs. This is a team that is battle-tested. It's a team that's physical, which they really hadn't had that in a long time. But that's a new mentality for this team, a physical, battle-tested team that's going to come out, play good defense, and try to compete in games that way. And I think that could make a difference for this team to possibly pull off a first-round upset. So we'll see. They could keep that momentum growing. They could pull off the win here against Fort Payne. I think this is going to be a competitive game. But regardless, this is a team that's going to be fun to watch here over the next 2 weeks, and this game to close out the regular season, and then when we get into round one against Hueytown. Well, things went just how Briarwood drew them up last week. If you came into the season with the plans for them, winning the region championship was up there. Not sure that they drew them up this way, but going into last week, they had to draw them up that way. Corner falls to Carver Birmingham on Thursday night. Briarwood takes advantage a night later. They take down Hayden, arguably the best they've looked all season against a Hayden team that struggled. We have to be honest there. But Briarwood went out, took care of business. It's a team that's faced adversity. They've dealt with injuries. They're missing some of their best players on both sides of the ball at different key positions, but they continue to fight. They continue to get better, and this is a team early in the season couldn't score points. Then they started scoring points. Then the defense started playing bad. Now the last couple of weeks, we've really seen them kind of start to put it all together on both sides of the ball for a complete game. This week, they're going into the playoffs as a region champion, so they get to host a playoff game as a one seed out of this region. Going to have some opportunities in the next couple of weeks to make it a little bit of a run here in the 5A classification. This week, though, a very challenging game. If you can compete in this one against McAdory, even if you lose, this is a game that can build your confidence and show that you're ready to compete and go on a run, because this is a pretty solid McAdory team.
I've hyped it up all season long since I saw it in week one. This is a very, very good offensive team overall. That's pretty battle-tested overall. They enter this matchup with just a couple losses on the season. And I think they definitely have a lot of questions that they're going to ask this Briarwood defense. It's obviously going to be a little bit shorthanded. Obviously, they haven't been playing with Garrett Witherington the last few weeks, and I think a lot of their defensive struggles have kind of been attributed to losing a game-changing personality like that along the defensive line, just somebody who can get into the backfield and blow up those plays early. But it's still an overall very solid team, especially on the defensive side. I think there are a lot of good weapons as well. I know Sam Canali's had a very good offensive season as well, but he's still a pretty good weapon for them in the secondary as well. And then obviously that just continues across the field. But this offense overall is looking very, very solid. They're balanced for, I think, the first time in a while. And they've got the pass game going, which is certainly a big compliment to them. I think that overall they're going to be able to hang there a little bit with McAdory, but obviously I think the Yellow Jackets are going to outpace them with just a couple of stops overall. I do like both of these teams in this matchup, and it could be a very fun one.
Yeah, this is one when you look at this battle. Briarwood, the last 2 weeks, they've given up 7 points in each of those matchups against John Carroll, against Hayden, two of the worst teams in the region. But even with that, it's a defense that's starting to play good football, consistent football. Early in that game against Hayden, they looked to be going back to some of those issues they were facing at the midway point of the season on the defensive side. But then they buckled down, and they became a unit that was hungry, was chasing down the football, forcing turnovers, and it just became a different unit at that point. And that's what they need. They need those big game-changing plays, like forcing those turnovers, getting a big sack. That's what can make the difference for a team like this. And defensively, these two teams have been pretty even this year, and both giving up right about basically 20.4 points per game. I think Briarwood at 20.3, McAdory at 20.4 so far this season. And so defenses have been very similar, but the offensive side, like you said, McAdory's been very talented on that side of the ball, scoring 36 points per game to Briarwood's 24 points per game. The big thing for me in Briarwood, Andrew, is we go to our 3D Air Services pick here between Briarwood and McAdory. 3D Air Services for all your HVAC needs this fall and winter. Make sure you visit them. It's getting cool out here. Get that heater tuned up with 3D Air Services. Andrew, the big thing for me, Briarwood can reach a new gear. They can reach a next level if this offense continues to grow like they have throughout this season. Sam Canale, you get the ball to him in space, can be really talented. We know what they can do at the quarterback position. Obviously, Charles Dedman continuing to grow as a passer, but then they can switch things up with a couple of different guys coming in to run the Wildcat as well, or the Lion, whatever you call it.
We'll workshop the title. Yeah. Curly, Matthews, Forrester, get on that.
They got something there, but this is an offense that can reach different gears. They can do some different things, but getting the ball to your playmakers in space, we saw it against Hayden. They didn't have to make big explosive plays down the field. It worked a couple of times, but they were able to get the ball in Canale's hand and let him make plays. Other guys doing the same thing. To me, Andrew, I want to get your 3D Air Services pick here, but to me, that's something that can take this team to the next level.
It definitely can, and you look at the road for this team ahead. They got a somewhat difficult first-round matchup against a team they've already faced in Leeds. It's going to be a shorthanded Leeds team, kind of like what we saw earlier this year.
Both those teams going to be dealing with some things. That's going to be a fun adversity battle there.
Exactly, and I think that's going to be the biggest test of how far this Briarwood team has grown, especially on the defense. Because, I mean, you look at both sides of the ball, they weren't really able to get the plays down the stretch in that matchup. This is going to be one of those games against McAdory where you have to make the plays down the stretch in order to get going. It's going to be a very tough and very physical battle. I think Briarwood's going to approach that with a playoff intensity to try and build off of that going into next week, especially when you consider that within the last 3 weeks, they've had a bye week and the two worst teams within the region. They'll want to ramp up their competition going into the playoffs and truly try to prove that they are a worthy region champion and be able to carry that momentum into the playoffs. I don't think that's going to be quite enough with this one. I think that McAdory is just able to get a couple of stops on the defensive end, be able to neutralize that Briarwood offense just a little bit, and I think the Yellow Jackets take advantage of that advantage that they have on the offensive side against this Briarwood defense and just outpace it a little bit down the stretch. But this is going to be a very entertaining battle. For my money, the second best game of the week behind this Kelsey Oak Mountain game. So I'm really looking forward to this one.
I agree. I think that McAdory is the better team, higher classification. To me, my mindset, I would be a very weird coach, but my mindset would be I don't want to go in and put too much out there, give too much away. I don't want to be too physical. I don't want to lose any guys. That would go for both of these teams because they're both everything's set for the week after this, and you know what you need to do. But you brought up a good point that Briarwood, they got to play a competitive game in a matchup like this because it's what they're going to face as they get into the postseason. And you don't want to go into the postseason with the mindset of not being focused and ready for a big matchup. So they got to prepare for this one just like they would any week of the season, including the playoff matchup that's going to take place the week after this. But I think McAdory just a little bit ahead, especially on the offensive side right now. But if Briarwood's defense comes to play, this could be a fun, lower-scoring, physical kind of battle that's maybe a 20-17, 28-21 kind of game. But they're going to have to come out and play well defensively to force it into a matchup like that. We'll see what kind of adversity Briarwood faces this week, if they continue to improve and they can take some momentum into that matchup. But it's not going to be hard to get them up for that matchup against Leeds the week after, looking for a little bit of redemption. So a good chance for Briarwood to get better this week as they take on a very talented McAdory team. We get a fun local county battle to close down the regular season between Montevallo and Vincent. The Yellow Jackets moving on to the playoffs after this. The Montevallo Bulldogs, it's their final game of the season. Can they salvage some confidence, some hope, and momentum going into the offseason in a matchup like this against a Vincent team that right now is playing some of its best football of the season? Real quick, proud sponsors of the Montevallo Bulldogs, Montevallo Main Street, sponsoring the Bulldogs all year on the Shelby County High School football show. Very grateful for their support this season. We've got the Day of the Dead Festival taking place this Saturday right there, right after Halloween on Friday night. Get out there for the Day of the Dead Festival. It's going to be a special time there in Montevallo. It's a great time of year to visit Montevallo Main Street, check out all the businesses, but the beautiful town with the fall colors coming out. It's a great spot. Go walk around the campus at the University of Montevallo as well and spend some time in their great parks down there. Beautiful time of year to visit Montevallo Main Street. Very grateful for their support throughout the season. Andrew, this is a Vincent team sitting at 7-2 right now. They've won 7 of 8, 3 in a row, playing some of their best football of the season. Very good defensive football team going up against a Montevallo offense that, just to be frank, is struggling, coming off a 42-6 loss to Jemison, who's not been a great team this year.
Yeah, and I think that Montevallo didn't approach that game last week with the amount of intensity that was required in that matchup. I would almost argue they got a little overconfident going into that matchup. I talked to some of the players down at regionals in Montgomery, and I'm going to be quite honest. I don't think that there was that level of intensity that they needed to get over the line in that matchup. There are no gimmies in this schedule, especially when you get up to Class 5A, a classification arguably a level above where Montevallo should be as a school right now. You cannot take any free lunches in this game, and you really do need to come out with the mentality that you need to go out and prove it on the field each week. Because I do believe this team overall has a lot of potential. They've got the guys in place, and I think that overall they're going to be trending well in the future, especially if they go back down to Class 4A. But overall, you contrast that with the Vincent team, and we said there was probably going to be a trap game last week against Greene County.
Took care of business.
They absolutely took care of business. They rolled it in the first half, especially on the defensive side. When the offense wasn't quite there in the second and third quarters, the defense stepped up, came up with some big plays overall, and then they were just able to pull away in that matchup. It's that defensive edge which I think takes this team to the next level, and they do not play with a soft mentality. They play with a no weeks off mentality overall, and that's what's taken them to this 7-2 record overall, and what's given me a lot of confidence for the Jackets going into the postseason.
And I'll back you up a little bit here. You faced a lot of flack in the offseason for the prediction you made about Montevallo this year, and a lot of it from the fans, which is understandable, and a lot of their kids being on the team. But at the end of the day, we're going to be challenged in life. You got to face those challenges and go out and prove people wrong. And they had that opportunity to do that this season. They haven't done it so far. And then you go into a matchup against a Jemison team that just hadn't been good this year, and you think you're going to win when you're riding a 7-game losing streak. You have that confidence. You got to go in. There's no reason for you to be overconfident. You need to be ready to go in and punch people in the mouth and knock them over and show your physicality and really just try to prove everything that's happened so far this season wrong. And so it's not a time to be overconfident. It's not a time really at the beginning of the season. Next year, when you look at the prediction for next year, if you pick them to win no games, it makes sense. They've got to go out and prove it at some point that they can compete, that this team is gelling together. And a game like this is an opportunity to send you into the offseason with that momentum, with that confidence. And it's not disrespect to the coaching staff. We love that coaching staff. It's no disrespect to the players. You just got to buckle up the chin straps at some point and go out and prove it. Vincent is a good football team. They're a 2A football team. To me, Montevallo, you said a 4A to 5A jump. Montevallo to me is a 3A football team with the numbers that they've got. They should not be competing at the 5A level. That's part of the problems they're facing right now. Vincent's a very like-minded, competitive group. They're both going to play a lot of guys on both sides of the ball. And this is one where you got to be ready to compete. Last year was a very close game, 21-19. Vincent wins that one. Vincent, to me, though, has been more consistent this year on the defensive side of the ball, much better there than they've been in a long time. And it's a team, to me, that may be starting to form into a better team than we saw last year. So at the end of the day, if Montevallo wants to win this one, it's just about coming out and, one, a good week of practice, good game plan, but focus, not necessarily confidence. Focus on doing your job the right way to make the plays that you need to win a football game.
I think it starts on the offensive side. I did laud this team, and rightfully so, going into last week's matchup for the gains that they made on the offensive side, putting together two of their best offensive performances against Shelby County and Sipsey Valley, but then just some mistakes on the offensive side. I don't think it was the cleanest game overall against Jemison, and I think that's one of the reasons the Bulldogs ended up losing that game, and especially against a Vincent team that's going to be absolute ball hawks in the defense. They're going to swarm that football and be able to try to get some stops and some tackles very quickly. So if you're able to get those hard yards on the ground, you give yourself a good chance within this football game, especially with the physical advantage that you have overall when you compare these two teams together. But I'm with you. I think Vincent has the momentum overall, and especially on the defensive side. I think they set the tone there overall. Could be a very entertaining football game. I do hope that Montevallo at least will come out and attack this game like they should, with it being their last game of the season. And I think Vincent might have to take a little bit of a step back in this game. You look at their playoff schedule. They host Falkville, and then their ultimate goal is to make the quarterfinals for the first time in school history. And when you look at this team overall, you think they have a good chance to do it. So you'll want to make sure that you're as prepared going into that as possible. But like I said earlier, don't expect this Vincent team to look at this matchup lightly and to approach it with the intensity that they have for a historic county rivalry, which is what this is. And I do think that Vincent, with that momentum on its side, is able to get the win in a little bit of a close victory here. But definitely looking for a response out of both of these teams going into the last week of the season.
And we're not college, we're not covering colleges. We're not covering the professional level when you look at football. But at the same time, our goal is to build kids up, get the most out of them, and give them their best opportunities. This is an opportunity that lies ahead for Montevallo.
Right.
This is one where nothing has gone your way this season. Since the opening game, you're able to walk away with a win in that one. The offense has struggled all year. You got to come out and find a way to put together some plays in this matchup. It's a challenge. It's a challenge that prepares you for the next steps of life. That's what football's about. That's what sports are about. Facing that adversity, facing challenging words, tough words from people like us, and going out and proving wrong, but also having a great chance to improve and get better as a person and work as a team. And we'll see if Montevallo can do that this week. I think they're going to come out and play their best game of the season, to be honest with you. But at the same time, I think Vincent is just a better football team right now, looking to carry that momentum. They don't want to lose that going into the playoffs. I think Vincent's going to play a really good football game in this one as well. So something's got to give. I think Vincent right now, just with the momentum they're carrying, should be the favorite to win this game and should win this game. But it's Montevallo's opportunity to really build some confidence going into the offseason, and I think they could put a scare into the Yellow Jackets. So we'll see how they handle that challenge. We'll see if the Vincent Yellow Jackets can continue to build their momentum with all the talent they've got there. Seems about like 4 different players playing a quarterback, 4 different players playing a running back. You can't figure out what's going on. This is a team that's got a lot of talent on that offensive side with multiple players, but that defense has been so good all year. And that's what I love to see from a team, especially that's playing guys on both sides of the ball. Really love that Vincent defense. I think that makes the difference in a Yellow Jackets win. The Shelby County Wildcats, coming off of a bye week, look to get ready for the playoffs there in Class 5A. This is a team that's playing some pretty good football this year overall, and you look at what they've been doing. Won their last 2 games by a combined 88-35. With their 50-21 win over Montevallo and the 38-14 win over Selma. Now they get a 1-8 East Limestone team. Andrew, great opportunity for the Wildcats after the bye week to get their rhythm back, get in that routine as they head into the postseason and look to put together a special run.
Yeah, a bit of a weird final stretch for this team, having the Week 10 bye, and then you have an East Limestone team that's winless in region play, and they haven't scored more than 13 in any of those region games. So I think this matchup shapes up to be a fairly easy Shelby County victory. I think they have a really good opportunity to stack up some run plays and then pull away with that. But you look overall at what this team was able to do with this stretch last year, and they were able to compete with a very good Citronelle team, one that's going to be kind of on the opposite side of them. They're now the 4 seed coming out of their region this year is Citronelle, and going to be going for a very difficult matchup against Catholic in the first round, Montgomery Catholic, I should say. But this is a Shelby County team going to the Valley, making that long road trip in the first round of the playoffs. They're going to want to be sharp going into that matchup, and I know that this is a team that truly approaches the playoffs like a second season, and they want to make sure they are fresh and sharp and have the momentum going into that matchup. They'll certainly have the momentum because I think they're going to win comfortably within this matchup. It's just all about putting the pieces together and then setting themselves up for success to now go in on the road instead of last year where they had that home field advantage against the Citronelle team making the big road trip. Now they're making the big road trip over to East Alabama to get that matchup. So I expect this team to use this matchup as playoff preparation to be able to prepare them for the games to come.
I agree, and I think it starts with the offensive side. Their defense has been so good. That's what's going to win them this football game. But this is East Limestone, despite their struggles, giving up just 26.4 points per game. Defense not played awful this year for them. They've had the offensive struggles this year. So if Shelby County can go out and kind of hit that next gear offensively this year, we've seen them throw the football a little bit more. You've had receiver step up. They can obviously run the football. I want to see that offense take another step this week as we near the postseason. But defensively, this team has been so good. 24.3 points per game that they're giving up across the board defensively against this East Limestone team that's scoring just 15.6 points per game. They've scored 16 or less in all but 2 games this season. including 4 straight. So it should be a big day for Shelby County's defense. Get that rhythm and routine back on the defensive side. That offensive growth is what I want to see. If they can do that and have a big game offensively in this one, pull away, comfortable win, that continues to build your confidence going into the playoffs. I think that's what we're going to see from the Wildcats. I expect a big-time performance for them in this game as they pick up a big win heading into the 5A playoffs here in a couple of weeks. That takes us to our AISA and ACSC breakdown. We've got all 3 of our teams in action this week, including the kickoff to the playoffs for Evangel in the ACSC. But let's start with our 2 AISA games, Andrew. Cornerstone at North River. We start there. This is a Cornerstone team that's lost 2 in a row head-to-head on the field. They get a forfeit win last week against Heritage, but now they take on a 1-9 North River team that's giving up 60 points per game. Scoring just 7.2 points per game. Cornerstone should have a dominant effort in this game to get back on the head-to-head winning track here.
Yeah, and I do think the forfeit kind of helped out Cornerstone a little bit last week because now this is the lone Thursday night game of our 8-man games, the lone Thursday night game of the Class A slate from what I was able to see overall as well. And with playoff games starting to move to Thursdays for 8-man in advance of that earlier state championship game, I think that's a really good advantage for this Cornerstone team. You get that extra rest going into this matchup that you should win extremely handily. North River's only win was by 2 over Heritage, and they've given up more than 40 in each game and 60 in 6 games. So I think that Cornerstone's offense is going to have a very good opportunity ahead of it to just absolutely blow past this North River team. But I think this definitely sets it up very well going into the playoffs because they're likely getting the winner of this next matchup between Coosa Valley and Snook. So I think they're going to want to make sure they're prepared going into that, especially when you look ahead to the semifinals and the finals where they're probably going to have to face Macon East and Escambia again, the 2 biggest tests that they have left to get to the state title.
Yeah, Cornerstone big in that one. I have Blowout Central written down. I think they win that one big. You mentioned Coosa Valley and Snook. You mentioned Macon East. Coosa Valley coming off a 48-30 loss to Macon East, an 18-point differential there. Not a bad game. That's a really good Macon East team, and Coosa Valley was able to compete with them. They're now 4-5 on the season. This is a 4-5 Snook team as well. Both these teams playing pretty consistently, pretty similar on both sides of the ball, but Coosa Valley a little bit better on both sides of the ball, scoring about 40 points per game, giving up just over 30 points per game on the defensive side. Snook scoring about 32.7, giving up 35.8. So 2 similar teams. What gives in this one, Andrew?
I think that Coosa Valley's offensive momentum is what carries it forward in its matchup. I think they get involved in a little bit of a shootout like we've seen over the last few weeks. I just think that this offense overall is going to be strong enough to carry it there, and that's what they haven't necessarily had within the past. Obviously, the defensive struggles have been there a little bit as well in the past, and that's presented itself again this year. But this offense has really taken a step up. They showed that potential, obviously, last year with those 2 record-setting performances, but they come into this year, I think, with a new focus, and they've attacked the schedule with a good intensity. They have a chance to finish the regular season at 500, which is an incredible achievement for Reese Donahue in his first year. I do agree with you. I think it's a little bit of a toss-up, but I think Coosa Valley makes a couple of big plays because they know what they have at stake in this matchup. There's 2 teams up at 5-4 above them in Trinity and Evangel. Both of them have likely wins against Heritage and Southern Prep, so they're probably out of this picture. But you look at these 2 teams. The winner likely gets Cornerstone. The loser likely gets the loser of this week's matchup between Macon East and Escambia. Obviously,
they don't want either one of those.
None of those 3 teams, arguably, are teams that you want to play, but I would argue Cornerstone is the team that you would want to play out of those 3 just solely based on the fact that they've lost twice to Macon East and Escambia. So I do think that Coosa Valley comes in, attacks that matchup with this mentality, and then gets over the line in what would be a big game for this program, a big win for this team.
And Coosa Valley familiar with Cornerstone would be a rematch, so you can work on some adjustments there that could be helpful. I agree. I just think offensively, Coosa Valley a little bit further along. You got 2 struggling defenses in this matchup, so to me, the offense that can capitalize the most on that going to have the best opportunity in this one. I think that's Coosa Valley. I think they will be able to pick up the win there against Snook. That takes us to our ACSC playoff game. Evangel hosting Lighthouse. The Lightning are rolling, coming off of a 54-20 win over Trinity for their 5th straight win of the season. Lighthouse to open the playoffs. They've already won this game 50-14 earlier in the season. looks like Evangel playing that good football right now should be able to roll in this matchup.
Exactly. They obviously have that win against them in dominant fashion earlier in the season, and this team has the momentum and is looking as sharp as ever. I have the Lightning rolling big in this matchup and continuing on to potentially win a state title. I feel very comfortable about them doing so as well, and what a phenomenal finish to the season it has been for this team. I keep giving this team praise week after week, but the turnaround that they've seen since that difficult opening stretch against very, very difficult opponents, I should add, has very much been phenomenal, and I do love what this team is putting together right now.
Yeah, a team that don't know what's in store for them after the ACSC run. I expect them to run to the title because of what we've seen down the stretch here in the regular season. But this is a team, I think if they played a lot of those teams they played early in the season again, would have a chance to win all of those matchups at this point. So Evangel playing its best football of the season. Expect them to roll against Lighthouse and continue to chase down an ACSC state championship. That does it for our AISA ACSC breakdown. 3 big games there for Cornerstone, Coosa Valley, and Evangel. That brings us to our SCR Stars of the Week segment, and another long list of players, and in a couple of cases, we've got 2 units that we're going to completely shout out for their efforts this past week. But Andrew, I turn to you for your 2 stars of the week here to kick off our SCR Stars of the Week segment.
Yeah, as has typically been the case, I'm going to go with my first star being one of the guys that I saw in person. And how could you not go with Dom Santiago? 21 carries for 217 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had a phenomenal night on the ground. I do have to shout out this Helena team overall, because Jacoby Studemeyer went for over 100 yards as well, and that Helena offensive line did a phenomenal job of just opening up spots, especially along the edge. Definitely got to give those tackles a big shout out, because they did a phenomenal job of making sure that this Helena team could get over the line, and they did a phenomenal job getting across the line on the run game as well. Very big plays, kind of like the Pelham game, where they just gashed big runs to start those drives. I was barely ready when I was filming those games, so sorry that those aren't quite in the highlights this week, but it's been certainly a highlight reel-filled season for this Helena run game, so definitely got to give a shout-out to Dom Santiago, and then Oak Mountain just taking a step up on the offensive side this week. Charlie Vaccarella having arguably the best game of his young career, completing 17 passes for 254 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then he also ran for 68 more yards on the ground, so going for just a hair over 300 all-purpose yards. A phenomenal effort, one that obviously ended in defeat to Hillcrest Tuscaloosa, but it made it an incredibly close game, and one that was right there at the end for this team. So he definitely played a big part in that game, so have to give him the second star of the week.
And the other end of that matchup as well for one of my SCR Stars of the Week, that's going to be Kason Lemons, the wide receiver there at Oak Mountain. When you have a big night throwing the football, you got to have a big target to throw to. Lemons, 8 receptions for 143 yards and 2 touchdowns to gather one of my SCR Stars of the Week. Fun to see that offense kind of coming together. Could be a big thing that we look at in this game on Friday between Chelsea and Oak Mountain too. As far as let's say that again. Thursday night. They're all games Thursday night, aside from AISA and Evangel in the ACSC. But yeah, so it could be a good thing that we see in this matchup if Oak Mountain's going to win this one. That offense taking the next step. The Pelham defense, also one of my stars of the week, a complete unit there. 21-14 win over Leeds. To see where this defense is this year to where they are, where they were last year. We talked about it throughout the season. Talked about it earlier in this show. This is a Pelham defense that's drastically improved from where it was last year, and they give up just 14 points against a really good Leeds team, giving up 12 less points per game than they were a season ago at this point. Very, very impressive what they've been able to do so far this season. Also have to shout out the Thompson defense. I called them out last week. Still not perfect, but they gave up 15 points and totaled 3 interceptions there against Prattville with the region championship on the line, and they made the plays in the second half that they needed, which is what I was questioning the week before. They've made those plays to win the football game. That was huge for them going into the bye week and the playoffs. Now they can get rested up, have a good chance at chasing down a 7A state championship. Some other guys that we got to mention, Sam Canale at Briarwood. Don't even have him on my list. I just know from the eye test and what I was able to watch in that game last week against Hayden. Great performance. Got the ball in space, made a good catch down the sideline. Also had a couple of catches where he got the ball out wide on swing routes or bubble screens and then took off running. Very impressive game with what we saw from Canale. A huge difference maker for Briarwood when he's on his A game. there for the Lions. Brock Bradley at Spain Park, he threw just 5 passes. Well, guess what? He completed 4 of them for 2 touchdowns and 119 yards. Short work for him in that matchup, a 49-0 shutout of Chilton County. Dom Santiago, you already talked about. Trent Seaborn, 20 of 27, 228 yards and 1 touchdown. We talked about it right before the segment started. We could basically tell you his stat line for this coming, or the first round of the playoffs and every week of the season before it even happens. It's always going to be between 220 and 275 yards with a couple of touchdowns in there. Another great performance from Seaborn in that matchup. Price Lewis, his top target, 8 receptions for 97 yards in that matchup. And Uriah Casey, 15 carries, 115 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's what they need.
Exactly.
If they have that running game going, getting into the playoffs, this is a team that becomes more and more dangerous. That would be the difference maker for the Thompson Warriors if they win a state championship. Another good running back at Vincent. Our final honorable mention here is Jaden Roberts, 26 carries, 176 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Good work for him, and it seems like that's the same thing every week, too. Jaden Roberts been a consistent player at the running back position. Good to have him back in the lineup this past Friday night for the Vincent Yellow Jackets. We'll see if he can carry that into the Montevallo matchup and then hopefully chase down school history there in the playoffs in 2A for the Vincent Yellow Jackets. That does it for our SCR Stars of the Week segment. We head into the final week of the regular season looking for some special performances, and then we get into the playoffs where it's really fun to see who stands out there in the postseason. Going to be a lot of fun to name our SCR Stars of the Week here over the next few weeks. Well, that brings us to the end of our final regular season show of the Shelby County High School football show and our bold predictions for the final week of the regular season. Not sure if we're going to be as successful as we have been all year because we've clearly kept track of every single one of them. I say that the only one I remember was last week. Briarwood and Thompson, they're region champions. I got it right. Andrew, where are we going this week for you and your bold prediction as far as what we've got on the slate? And a very interesting week with what's ahead and games that really are just all about pride, and some of them don't really mean that much at all, to be honest with you.
Well, I'll go with one of the pride matchups with Calera and Stanhope. I know I picked against the Eagles earlier on, but I think they do get it done. I think that's going to be my bold prediction, is that Calera gets it done at Stanhope. Elmore finishes the season with 3 wins overall and is able to get that all-important victory going into the offseason.
I think I go to the Oak Mountain Chelsea game, our game of the week, right here at Chelsea. I think you're going to see the Hornets run for over 200 yards. We talked about this being a defensive battle early in the show, and I remember very vividly saying I think this could be a very low-scoring game, that whoever makes the defensive plays last in the second half is going to win it. I think Chelsea can run over 200 yards. I think Charlie Vaccarello and this Oak Mountain offense can go over 300 yards passing in this game for his biggest game. I think we end up in an offensive shootout now. So completely contradicting myself and what my brain tells me is going to happen versus what the potential of what I'm boldly predicting will happen. So
these are what our hearts want to see.
And I realize as I talk more and more, the crazier and crazier I sound. So we'll see if that crazy carries into the postseason here next week. But, this is going to be a fun final week of the regular season. Some of these teams, it's their last game of the year. Look forward to covering them one final time this year and seeing what they can leave on the line. Then obviously next week we get to jump into the playoffs and really have some fun and see what's going to happen here over the next few weeks with a postseason stretch that could end with maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe more state champions this year. We got Briarwood back into the 5A playoffs. We got Spain Park with a chance. We got Thompson, who's the defending champ, as a team that's always going to have a chance, and several others that are playing their best football right now. We'll see what happens as we jump into the playoffs next week. I want to thank all of our sponsors as well: Wayne's Pest Control, Oak Mountain Hearing, Montevallo Main Street, 3D Air Services, all for their support throughout the year. We'll continue to mention them as we jump into the playoffs as well. And we'll be back Thursday night, the night before Halloween. All of our games, for the most part, HSA games, all on Thursday night this week. Cornerstone also, and then Coosa Valley and Evangel right now still scheduled, as far as we know, for Friday night this week. So it's going to be a fun Thursday night. We'll see you then. That does it. Alongside Andrew Simonson, I am Alec Etheridge. This has been the Shelby County High School Football Show. We'll see you for the live show on Thursday.